Thank you very much for doing this. And
Sure, my pleasure.
I wanted to begin by asking the first question that occurred to me when I first saw your name on the show, which is Kiernan Shipka is a very beautiful name, but it's an unusual name.
Yes.
So what's the story behind the name?
Well, Kiernan means son of a lord.
Okay.
I really don't know where my parents got Kiernan from.
Mm-hmm.
My mom's Irish, and Kiernan is usually a surname, and apparently she had some friends back in college that had the last name of Kiernan, and she just really liked it. And
Okay.
Shipka is my dad's name, which is Czechoslovakian.
Okay. So now, where are you originally from? How did you end up out here?
I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois, and my parents and we still go back and forth because my dad still works there. I consider both places home, really. And I got started at acting at a very young age, but I really started when we moved out here, and I just really wanted to do it. It was always something I loved.
When you say really young age, you mean really young age, because I saw, what was your first commercial?
I did some Gerber baby work, but I started really just loving acting and even writing plays and stuff with my friends when I was around 5 is really when I just...
And I read in one of your other interviews that it was not only friends, but you would get your grandparents and other family members involved.
Definitely,
What kind of stuff would you do? What kind of, and this is your free time, which is obviously something you love doing. What were your roles in all of this? Because I saw you had a lot of different parts.
I've done scenes at airports before, and it was all very random stuff. I actually have no idea where it all came from, but it was really fun. I got a lot of people to act in them.
And you
productions.
And it's acting. It's all kinds of responsibilities that you have, right? I saw you're not just acting. You're
right.
Directing, editing, writing it, right? That's impressive. So, what I wanted to obviously ask you is, when did you first hear the two words, Mad Men? When did those first come to you, and how? What's the story?
There is not a huge story behind it. I was going on auditions. It was pilot season, and I auditioned for the role of Sally Draper. And it wasn't one of those long, drawn-out audition processes. I believe it was just 3 auditions, and then I got the role.
Do you remember what they were asking, what they were looking for as far as Sally at the time?
I remember they were looking for... I remember that everything had already been cast because I was not in the pilot. So they wanted somebody resembling John Hamm and January Jones, of course, and there wasn't a huge description, though.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't a huge description because it was only on the breakdown, just a possible recurring character.
Mm-hmm.
I never had any idea where it was going to go.
And so, when you got the news that you had it, this was, I believe, the first TV show that you were going to be involved. What was your reaction when you found out it was happening?
I remember I screamed a lot, and I was really excited. But I was in the car, so
okay.
I couldn't jump around or run around or anything.
And then the first day of production comes around, and you have to your first day on the set, as you said, it wasn't for the pilot, but what were those early days of doing it like? Particularly if you remember the first day. I'm always curious. Was it exciting, nerve-wracking, intimidating?
It was super exciting. I remember I have a couple memories from the first day. I had this plastic bag over my head, so in the first scene, and there was a stunt double there teaching me how to do it, so I was really psyched about that. That seemed pretty cool,
yeah.
And I didn't know yet that January played my mom, because there was a couple women on set, so I was trying to figure out which one played my mom, going around asking everyone.
I guess in those early days, as you said, you didn't know necessarily where the character was going. It was sort of not, at that point, the fixture of the character that it is now, that we know Sally's very integral, very central to the whole show. But at that time, it must have been kind of perplexing in a way. You didn't know what's going to become of this character. So how did you look at it? Did you figure this might just be a few weeks, few months, or did you get the sense that at what point did you get the sense that they were going to keep Sally around for a while?
At first, I was just so happy. I was on set. I had a couple scenes here and there, and I was always excited to do it. And then I actually bumped into the creator and writer and executive producer of the show, Matt Weiner, just up around this street in my neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And he told me that I was going to have this upcoming episode that was going to be big. And I remember I was so excited to see that he believed in me. And it was a really fun episode. And that's when I first kind of started sensing that, ooh, Sally could become a really big character here. I was excited.
Well, that anticipates the next question, which is season 4, if I remember correctly, the first words are, who is Don Draper?
Right.
But for people who maybe haven't been watching the show as regularly as some of us, or they are just curious to hear your take, I have to ask the question to you. Who is Sally Draper?
Sally Draper is a very lonely and lost girl who is growing up and has a mother and father that really don't pay any attention to her, and is going through a very dramatic time in her life right now.
And so you think, you're talking about some of what she's feeling. I'm wondering who is not to blame, but who's responsible for the way she's feeling. In a way, it seems like she's alone, even though we know she has parents, we know she has a brother, she has this friend Glenn, she has a lot of people that her grandpa for a while, but at this point she seems kind of all alone.
Definitely. I think a lot of people are, I think the whole situation, everyone in this situation is responsible for that. I don't think there's actually one person. Betty is probably the main person at the end, making Sally feel so guilty and making her almost think that the family is just moving because of her, because she actually has a friend. So I think everyone is making Sally lonely. But it's mostly her mother, but just the situation, really.
And do you think she loves her? Like, how does she really, at the end of the day, feel about her parents, particularly her mother? We've seen, I don't know if you've had a chance to see on YouTube, there's a funny montage where they've put together all the times where she's telling you and Bobby, go to your room, don't do this, and you realize how much she does that. What do you think Sally deep down feels about her and her dad? But
I think Sally loves her mother because she is her mother, but she doesn't like her mom. She loves her, but she doesn't like her in a way. She would never ever get along with her if she wasn't her mom, but somehow just because she is her mom, she loves her.
That's a good answer. And did the death of Grandpa Gene and the being forced to be apart from Glenn and the separation of the parents, did all of that make Sally, do you think she liked the opportunity to go to Dr. Edna, the psychologist? Was that helpful to have somebody that you could actually talk to?
I think it was so helpful to Sally that she was seeing Dr. Edna, because it's really someone that she can be so open to, and Glenn as well. I think those are the people that actually she really wants to open up to and just talk to in her life. Those are the only people that she really feels comfortable doing that with.
Yeah. So one of the questions that I know I had for a long time when I was watching you with some of the more, especially in season 4, it seemed like you got to do a lot more meaty stuff and meaty scenes, and there are moments where we see you cry, or there are moments where we see you do different, it must have been challenging as an actress. And so I wanted to ask, when you're approaching her, the process, I assume it starts, you either get your script or you talk to Matt Weiner or whatever, you find out what you're doing, and then how do you get from that point to you as Kiernan being able to make yourself cry or whatever it is as Sally? What's the some actors have different processes or techniques. I'm curious what you do.
Well, you get your script, and it's about 1 or 2 nights before the table read, and sometimes it's only a couple hours before. Who knows? And you read it, and you just get the whole thing. You get the feel of it, and then once you're at the table reading it with everyone, you kind of get a little bit more of a sense of where the scene's going to go, what everyone else's vision is kind of. And then once the hair and the makeup is done and you're in the set and then the director calls to action, that's, I think, when it just all happens. And you always have a vision of how the scene's going to go, but really you can't really predict anything until the director calls action, because it just all goes from there.
We mentioned earlier that prior to season 4, it was not necessarily certain what Sally's role was going to be, but my understanding from what I read was that Matt Weiner, when season 4 came along, made a formal decision that Sally is now a permanent, full cast member. When you heard that, what did that mean to you?
I was really happy, and of course that it does mean a lot, but even when I do go on set, they don't treat you any differently. It's not that type of set where your title isn't really anything on the set. They don't treat you differently, but of course it's very nice to know that you're a series regular.
And you're talking about the tone of the set. What is it like? I hear you guys have a lot of fun. I know you're working hard also, obviously. I just last week did an interview with John Slattery, who was telling me a little bit about it. But I wanted to ask you what your experience is as a place to go most days of when you're working. What's the atmosphere like?
The atmosphere is great on Mad Men. Everyone's really friendly. They're welcoming. They're nice. It's a really fun set to be around. But then when you're actually on the set when you're in the scene, when you're in the office or in the family house, there's a different vibe that gets going. People start becoming a little bit more method, getting into the character a bit more, and I think that's when the vibe becomes more what the scene's vibe will be. But just at base camp or in the hair trailer, everyone's so nice. They're always nice, of course, but then once you're about to film, the vibe of the scene starts kind of going around.
And I wanted to ask along those lines, who among the people that you work with, whether they're on camera or off camera, who are the people that you're friendliest with, that you hang out with the most, or that you get along with the best?
I'm pretty friendly with all the people. I mostly worked with January and John and Jared and Christopher Stanley, but I got to do episode 9 where I got to go in the office.
Oh, yeah.
And I really became friends with all of those people as well, and you always see them around, so I guess I'm friendly with everyone.
What's a normal day like when you're shooting Mad Men? You wake up, from the time you wake up until the time you go to bed, what is that timing like? Is it an early day or a late start? And just if you could take me through just the average day that you're at work on this.
The average day, a lot of days you'll wake up really early for call time, 6 in the morning, 7 in the morning, but a regular, probably an average time, I'd say is about 9 or 10. And I don't have to get there extremely early because my hair doesn't take as long and they don't do my makeup.
As long as whose? John's or January's?
Everyone's, I think mostly for all the women the hair takes a bit longer,
right,
because there's all these different pieces and styles they do and just different things. But for me it's just they pull it back in a ponytail, maybe they'll blow dry it, put a bow in it. But then you sometimes wait around just a bit before your scene comes, and then you start filming, and then there'll be a couple different shots, and then you'll go to the next scene, and then that pretty much just goes till the end of the day. Occasionally there'll be gaps of maybe 10-15 minutes that you're not filming, but besides that it's pretty much filming, but just after the getting ready process, it's mostly filming.
So it's a long day it can be?
Definitely, but always fun.
what has been your favorite scene to shoot as Sally? I'm always curious to know. It's probably a tough question, but
It's definitely a tougher question, but I have a couple favorite scenes. One would be, well, just all Sally scenes with Glenn. I've had so much fun doing because I like Martin Weiner a lot. He's fun. He's actually Matthew Weiner's son.
I was going to ask. I didn't know that.
Definitely. And he's just, we get along really well. And I love doing any scenes in the office because I'm not usually on that set. And that's always very fun. And just a lot of scenes where Betty's terrorizing Sally can be so enjoyable, so fun.
What was the best day that you've had on Mad Men and the worst day?
Well, there's been so many best days.
Yeah.
I think just when good scenes come along, that's when you've had your best day. And I've just had a couple days where I've actually had a bad cold or been sick on the set, and those days usually aren't too fun because, and a lot of times I remember when I was sick, ironically, I'd have to be sleeping in some of the scenes, and I'd really actually fall asleep for just a bit because I was so tired and just kind of, whenever I have a cold or anything on set, I'm usually not in the best mood. But besides that, all the days are fun.
Okay. And at the end of the day, at the end of a day of shooting, or at the end of a season of shooting, is it hard for you to go home and leave Sally behind? Do you maybe act out a little bit differently? I know we've got Mom around here. We can ask her. But what's your? Is it hard to just sort of separate yourself from Sally's mannerisms and behavior and stuff sometimes?
At the end of the day, Sally's always in my mind. I'm thinking about her. If I know when I'm going to work next, I'll be thinking about, well, what's the scene going to be like? Something like that. But when I ever leave at the end of the season, I'm super sad because it's so fun on the set, and I never really do want to leave because it's great. But I don't think I ever lose Sally or anything, but I don't bring back all of her manners to my household.
Right. So by my math, which is admittedly not great, but I think you're 11 years old, right?
Yes.
11 and a half, right? So some of the material in Mad Men is a little bit risque, and I understand that you and your parents have worked out a system where you can still be a part of it, but maybe not read or see everything. Is that right? Can you explain how it works, and also what your plans are? I heard for your 16th birthday.
Exactly. Well, I'm not allowed to see the whole show. I'll watch my scenes sometimes and other scenes that my parents think I might enjoy, but I'm mainly just focused on the Sally parts, but I can go to all the table reads. And yes, for my 16th birthday, I'm definitely having a Mad Men marathon.
And watching all the stuff you haven't been allowed. Do you enjoy watching your work that you do see, or sometimes actors are very critical of themselves, or some of them like it? What's your feeling?
I think it's kind of a mixture. Sure, I'm kind of critical, but it's also fun to see the scene because you know how it was made and how many angles it took and different takes, and it's always fun to see what the end result is. So I think it's kind of a mixture of both.
And you really have the last 4 or 5 years of your life documented, so you can go back and see little Kiernan doing stuff. That must be interesting. And you've really, I think, over those years, you've changed and grown a lot and different things. What are the biggest things that you've noticed that have changed over that time?
I don't think I noticed. I don't think anything's just boom. It changes. I just think slowly I'm getting taller and losing my lisp and all that. I love looking back at the old episodes. It's so much fun.
The lisp was very cute. I'm sorry it's gone, but that's okay. So, what do you make of the attention that comes from being involved with a show that's as successful as Mad Men? I know there are now premieres. We've got award shows you've been to many, and they're going to be to many more. You have strangers that know who you are. It's a different kind of life than most people have, so I'm wondering how you feel about it.
Right. Going going to the award shows, it's definitely a fun experience. I get to meet some pretty awesome people there, and that's really fun. And just on the everyday walking down the street, if someone comes up to me, they'll usually say, "Oh, I kind of was Sally," or "Sally reminds me of me a lot," and that's really neat for me. So I like it.
And just speaking of the award shows thing, I was leaving the Golden Globes, and I happened to be this most recent one, and I noticed that you were a few people in front of me, and I was gonna say something, and then all of a sudden Julianne Moore walked over in front of me and had something to say. Do you remember what she said? And also, who's been the nicest compliment that you've received through these? I'm sure you've gotten a lot.
That was a pretty amazing one. I remember that. She just turned to me and said, "Oh, I love your work. It's so great." And I was really starstruck because it was crazy. I remember that a lot.
All right, the last two, then I'll free you from this. But I just want to ask you, when you're not working, what do you do for fun? I know Mad Men's been on a bit of a hiatus now, so I guess what does your schedule involve? School, right? And then what do you do outside of that?
I do a lot of dance and singing. I love singing. And just having fun with friends. I do a lot of swimming, a ton of rollerblading, taekwondo.
Wow.
So just...
You keep him busy.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, the last question is, Matt Weiner has said that Mad Men is not a show he's not going to try to run it for 20 years. It's going to come to an end. I think he's kind of doing the 60s, and then after that it sounds like it's going to... and so, as you get older and the years of doing Mad Men tick by and fewer remain in front than in the past, what do you think you would like to do going forward? Do you what sorts of things do you want to do as you get older? Do you want to remain an actress? Do you want to go to college? Do you want to do other things?
I definitely would love to remain an actress and do all sorts of things. Comedy, drama. I'd love to direct, and of course, I'd love to go to college too.
Well, that could be a whole spin-off of Mad Men. The Sally in the 70s, I guess. But, all right. Well, thank you very much for doing this. I appreciate
you're welcome.